I'll do a little bit more of an introduction in a second, but I thought we could settle into this one of my favorite poems. It's a poem by Mary Oliver called Humpbacks, and she has a great number of beautiful, incredible poems about the natural world. And this one in particular, I think, will set up the space. So feel comfortable in your seat, maybe flatten your feet against the floor, rest into the space, feel a gravitational pull as you feel heavy and weighted and held by the earth. Now I'll begin the poem. There is all around us this country of original fire. You know what I mean. The sky, after all, stops at nothing, so something has to be holding our bodies in its rich and timeless stables, or else we would fly away. Off Stellwagen, off the Cape, the humpbacks rise, carrying their tonnage of barnacles and joy. They leap through the water, they nuzzle back under it like children at play. They sing too, and not for any reason you can't imagine. 3 of them rise to the surface near the bow of the boat, then dive deeply, their huge scarred flukes tipped to the air. We wait not knowing just where it will happen. Suddenly, they smash through the surface. Someone begins shouting for joy, and you realize it is yourself as they surge upward, and you see for this first time how huge they are as they breach and dive and breach again through the shining blue flowers of the split water. And you see them for some unbelievable part of a moment against the sky, like nothing you've ever imagined, like the myth of the 5th morning galloping out of the darkness, pouring heavenward, spinning. Then they crash back under those black silks, and we all fall back together into the wet fire. You know what I mean. I know a captain who has seen them playing with seaweed, swimming through the green islands, tossing the slippery branches into the air. I know a whale that will come to the boat whenever she can and nudge it gently along the bow with her long flipper. I know several lives worth living. Listen. Whatever it is you try to do with your life, nothing will ever dazzle you like the dreams of the body. Its spirit, longing to fly while the dead weight bones toss their dark mane and hurry back into the fields of glittering fire, where everything, even the great whale, throbs with song. Thank you for coming here today to talk about our experiences with being mindful with the natural world, being mindful with nature. I'm going to share with you my screen. I will now take us through a PowerPoint. I'm a professor, so that will come out a bit here and there. Okay. My name is Jolina Ruckert. Nice to meet you. I welcome you to turn on your screen if you feel comfortable. This is being recorded. You can chime in at any point. I might miss the chat here and there, but I'll try to keep an eye on it. So you can ask me a question. If you feel comfortable, you can unmute yourself and ask a question or raise your hand. There's even a little hand function on the raise hand option, and I can answer questions along the way. And I'll pause to give some space for some questions. So I am a professor at Lewis and Clark College, where I have my lab, the Sustainability Psychology and Action Lab, and I look at the ways that present moment awareness and nature immersion can help us as individuals feel better, psychologically speaking. How does it improve our lives? And also, how do these experiences support our relationship with the natural world and our desire to care for nature and protect nature? You're going to hear me say the natural world and nature a lot, and I'm really broad in what is conceived in this idea. Sure, we could probably include the chairs that we're sitting on and the houses that we're cozy inside right now, as well as potentially our computer and all the things. But I think it's important too to recognize a distinction of something that goes beyond the human artifact and something that exists in nature, sometimes with our help, like our gardens, but also sometimes in very spontaneous and wild and even wild domestic ways, like your puppy or a tree out in your backyard or a forest park. I have been studying this for a really long time. I have my master's in clinical psychology, where I focused on animal-assisted therapy, and a PhD in developmental psychology. And then I was at the University of Washington at the time, and I was looking at two larger trends from a psychological perspective. How do we feel and change and grow and realize our fullest potential as human beings as we are increasingly connected to a technological world and increasingly disconnected from a natural world? So I've been thinking about these ideas. I care about them a lot. And recently, after having my own cancer diagnosis, I decided to start a more serious practice of yoga. And so I had my 200-hour yoga teacher training, and that has really helped ground a lot of this work as well. I have a few acknowledgments I'd like to make before we get started. So I'd like to share that I live in Hood River in Oregon on the Columbia River Gorge, and I work, play, explore, and learn here on the traditional lands of the Wasco, Wishram, Cowlitz, Yakima, and Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. The practices that I share today have been adapted from ancient practices that are born out of the Vedic tradition. So you will see these practices emerging meaningfully in Shintoism and Buddhism and yoga and Hinduism. And so it's important, I think, for us to acknowledge that and give gratitude and honor the sacred quality of these practices for individuals from these communities. And also, these practices are born out of the research coming from Japan on Shinrin Yoku. And so I'd like to thank all those who have come before me, who have thought about these ideas carefully, who have created a space for us to understand them more deeply here in the West and to begin to practice and to heal ourselves. And in doing so, hopefully begin to better relate to the natural world and support the healing of the earth. Take a moment to think about a meaningful experience you had in the natural world. A time that pops out in your mind as beautiful, as meaningful, as special, something positive, it sticks with you. You can consider if you were alone or with someone. Think about what you were doing. What was your body doing? Where were you? What were your senses experiencing? How are you feeling? Does anybody feel like sharing? Jenny, I see your hand up. Oh, let me unmute you. I just sent a request.
Yep. Hi.
Hello.
So I have one that popped right into my head, which is all my life, my family has gone to this camp. It was built by the CCC, and it's kind of, if anyone ever went to a Girl Scout or Boy Scout type camp, it's set up that way. It has a big central area and cabins. But we've gone there. This actually would have been our 40th reunion, but everything was closed due to COVID. So we've been doing this generally for 10 days every year for my entire life. And it's open front cabins. So we live, kind of outside while we're there. And one of the things that I always love to do, and the first thing that popped into my mind when you said a nature-based experience, was that we used to bathe in the river. It's the North Fork of the the South Fork of the Santiam River, and it kind of wraps around the campground. So there are multiple little pockets of water that you can swim in. And when I got to be a teenager, I used to love to go in the evening, sometimes with some of my girlfriends that were there, and other times just by myself a couple of times, and just go bathe in the evening when the water and the air temperature seemed to be a little closer to the same. And it would be kind of twilight evening, and there would always be bats flying around just above the surface of the water. So they would be flying right around me, and I would be able to be nude because I was by myself or just with some of my friends, and we were bathing. And that experience, feeling the little breeze, the water currents running by our bodies, and just feeling the water on us, and the bats flying around, was just an incredibly peaceful and amazing experience that has always stuck with me, and something I always hope to go back to doing. Hopefully this next year I'll get to go do it again.
Yeah, right? It's great to have these memories that draw us back, these special places that draw us back again and again, that we can have on our own, that you can share with your family, with your friends, and literally a very immersive experience. You're swimming, you're being held by earth or by the water of the earth. And so that buoyancy and the embrace of the water can be so soothing, even if it's a little nippy, a little bit cold. I also had someone share, and I won't say names just in case, but I'll say that this person said, I spent most of the summer outside on Mount Shasta and Lost Lake in meditation, in hoping that will carry me over through the winter. That's beautiful. And another sharing experience of sitting on a beach in Maui and watching the whales, and being in the warm water with the sun on the face, and feeling that sensory experience of the warmth and that incredible awe-like experience of when we have nature around us, the birds soaring or the whales playing, or just being in a majestic, big, wild forest like Mount Hood, Mount Shasta, these big places with lots of creatures. Thank you so much for sharing. That's where we'll be today, thinking about these meaningful places. As a scientist, I always have to jump into the data, but I think it's really amazing and important that we needed all this data, but we did. And we've spent decades now researching why humans need nature. And we do, and that it's good for us. And there's many ways that it's good for us. So being with nature, interacting with nature has all of these psychological and physiological benefits, and the research really is dynamic. So they've studied all sorts of ages, young to elderly populations. They've looked at people all around the world, cross-cultural research. They've looked at really different kinds of activities, from having just a picture, a painting of nature on your wall, having a background on your computer that's a natural background, having maybe at your dentist and you look up and there's a little naturescape picture on the ceiling for you to stare at while you're getting your teeth cleaned. so many kinds of studies that are more of this mediated nature, nature on a screen, and then all the way over to the work where you're actually, you know, here in a wild place. If you look at this image with these cuddling sea lions, or are they seals? I don't know. I think they're sea lions. I took the picture, I should know. Wild places, multi-day experiences of hiking, of biking, of sitting in meditation, of walking through a forest. So a lot of different experiences and different kinds of nature, from animals to plants, to plastic plants and pictures and things like that. And so we see this plethora of work suggesting that we can improve our mood, boost our mood, feel this shift so that we can feel less anxiety, less depression, more positivity, more optimism, feeling calm, feeling relaxed. That's a lot of the research, is looking at that restorative quality nature has when you're out there, not doing the big exciting things like propelling down a rock, but maybe sitting in the river, floating. This capacity for the restorative, the relaxing on our nervous system, our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, seeing that shift from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic, seeing that shift from activation and stress to more relaxation. The restoration research also is looking at restoring our minds, our cognitive ability, our thinking capabilities. So one thing we do is we can sometimes turn over thoughts in our mind, this rumination, and that can actually be quieted with even just short, brief walks out in nature. So taking a break during the day and walking around town and getting some fresh air and noticing the trees, really paying attention to the nature that you see popping up in the gardens around you. That can quiet that rumination. It can also restore directed attention, restore your attentional abilities. They call it this soft fascination that nature has. When you're out in a park, you see the glittering of the lights on the trees and the breeze, and so it's allowing the directed attention that you're using, something like you're using now to pay attention, that sort of gets diffuse, and you can flow through different kinds of experiences. So it's restoring your attentional capabilities, and that can support the creativity that you might be experiencing. It can support memory. It can support just cognitive fatigue, relieving some of that feelings of fatigue. And then there's a lot of research on the physiological benefits, from healing faster. If you, in a hospital, if you have a window to the natural world compared to like some kind of garden or green space or fountain compared to a brick wall, you're not only going to heal faster from gallbladder surgery, you're going to take less medicine, and you're going to be nicer to the nurses. But all kinds of healing benefits, immune system support. We'll talk a little bit more about that as I talk specifically about forest bathing research, but just a lot of great stuff suggesting that it's good for us. Let's get out there and do things in nature, and that's with all kinds of nature. Bring nature into your home, have some forest tea and have some plants around you, and get outside and go for a walk and look for that nature in your, they call it ordinary nature, that nature in your backyard or around your town, and maybe get a little bit deeper into wilder places if you can. Building from this research, then we have a whole lot of researchers and scientists and practitioners and clinicians trying to understand, well, how can we harness these benefits, really foster that opportunity to feel better in relationship to nature? And so there's different kinds of nature therapies that occur, and some of these are more preventative, like forest bathing might be seen as something more preventative, that we're going to go outside, take a walk in nature, go slow, be mindful, and then that might help our immune system be a little bit more rigorous and supportive so that we can combat different kinds of things like tumors and diseases and illnesses and viruses. Some of it's prescribed, so people who are struggling with their body image and experience of their bodies, people who are struggling with PTSD and traumatic memories and some of the heightened anxiety, youth that are in vulnerable situations and have struggles with managing their emotional experience and their aggressive feelings and things like that, that different individuals can then be prescribed to go and be in nature. And there's many kinds. So wilderness therapy, you go out for 3 days or a week, you're out in the wild places, you're building fires and you're building camps. Animal assisted therapy, that comes in many forms, different kinds of animals. I recall a study talking about working with someone who was suffering with schizophrenia, and that sort of fearful quality of coming out into the world and having a turtle as their therapeutic guide, and the turtle's head would pop out and the therapist would talk about that with the client and talking about that fear. There's tons of research on dogs and their benefits from interacting with them. Horse equine therapy, that's a very commonly researched. I did a little work with dolphin assisted therapy during my undergrad and master's degree. That's where we, in this case, we had a dolphin that had to live in captivity due to a liver illness, and so it needed the medicine and that support. And then children with physical and psychological disabilities, so maybe a child who is diagnosed on the autism spectrum, they would come in and then interact with the dolphin, and the dolphin would actually, they would play games, maybe throw something to the dolphin, and the dolphin would be a sort of rewarding experience for participating in the therapeutic process. There's many kinds of therapeutic horticulture and horticulture therapy. So horticulture therapy is the actual therapeutic program of some clinician working with some client and helping them through some kind of disordered thinking or feelings. And then horticulture therapy is pretty much anything you do in the garden, taking care of plants. Adventure therapy, that's something I'm familiar with as a cancer survivor, going on these outdoor adventures with other cancer survivors, going to the beaches and surfing, or the mountains and rock climbing. Grounding is an interesting and novel research endeavor, though it's been something that humans have been doing for a long time, but actually getting people to go outside and stand on the dirt and feel improvements from that. So there's lots of things that we're doing in the community to try to get people outside, to have more time with nature, to feel the benefits, to support their health and well-being. And a lot of this work is now focusing on specifically a certain kind of nature interaction. So again, we have a lot of range of nature. This can be plants and animals in your home, to neighborhood parks, to wild places, big forests. But what you're doing then is slowing down, being in relationship with nature, and really engaging that present moment mindful awareness of the experience. And this work is coming from Shinrin Yoku or Salim Yok. Salim Yok is actually Korean, and Shinrin Yoku is Japanese, and both of them translate to forest bathing. So sometimes I think when we have it in English, it sounds a little bizarre, right? Like, am I going to take a bath in the forest? What does that mean? But it's really seeking to get that quality of immersion, really falling into the space, being immersed, your senses being fully engaged by that natural world. So what are you seeing, and what are you smelling, and how does it feel, and being present in the moment of those experiences. We see so much work coming out of Japan, China, Taiwan, Korea, and lots of money being spent here. So the Japanese government had offered millions of dollars. About 1982, in the early 80s, they were noticing that people weren't spending as much time in the forest as they used to, not spending as much time outside. So there was less support for the forests, and that was causing issues with funding. And so they funded some research to understand, is the forest good? How is it good? How can we support people's interest and relationship to forests, broadly speaking? And specifically, they were interested in some of the trees that they were trying to protect, like the Hinoki cypress. And so they funded a lot of this research, and a lot of this research is biophysical research. So how do changes in metabolic disease shift, or what sort of neurotransmitters are present during an experience? Are you seeing a drop in cortisol and things like that? And really looking at that shift of the sympathetic to the parasympathetic, the stressed out to the relaxed and restored. and great research was emerging, and so they added more money to the fund and they started to build forests. And South Korea came right behind and did something very similar, but even more on a grand scale, with over $100 million of funding to do the research and create many different kinds of parks and environments and places in cities and in towns and then in more remote places, so that you can go and access the natural world and interact with it. They have the Happy Train is one of the things that they have funded. And so this is where they take bullies, kids who are in high school and elementary school who are bullying on their peers, and they bring them onto the Happy Train and they take them for a ride, and they use therapeutic conversations and activities as they go through the forest, and then they work on developing their empathy and their compassion. So there's all kinds of things. They offer forest burials. And while there's a wide range of activities that they call forest bathing, there's often this element of the Buddhist Shinto history of mindful contemplative practices. Is there any questions at the moment that I can answer? See one in the chat. Oh, this is great. Yeah, I want to go for a hike as well. Thank you for your attention as I get all professor on you. Is this a lecture? Okay. So I pulled this directly from a 2017 review of many of the forest bathing, Shinrin Yoku, Salim Yok research specifically on going into nature and being present in the moment, and nature again being this wide range of research. So you'll see lots of similar, I'll answer that question, one second. You'll see lots of similar findings, but here we're specifically focused on what are we doing in this present moment awareness. So you'll see the mental improvements, the physical, emotional qualities of joy and awe and gratitude and reducing anxiety, depression, but you also see a lot of that body physical well-being, so respiratory improvements and cardiovascular. And I'm always really drawn to the research on the immune system functioning. And this is actually when my passion for this particular form of nature interaction, because I've been thinking about humans interacting with nature for over a decade, but really thinking about it in this mindful, contemplative, reciprocal space of interacting with nature and absorbing and feeling through the senses, because I started seeing this research on natural killer cells. So I had just been told I had 15% chance to survive my cancer diagnosis. It was a pretty bad one, and it was very difficult, to say the least. It still is, right? And so I was kind of looking through the world, how can I feel safer and better and connect more and heal? And I was searching all over the place, and this was one of the spaces that felt really relevant and personal to me, and just seeing the healing that was happening for cancer patients, but then seeing the actual data on these natural killer cells was really exciting for me. So natural killer cells are part of our immune system. They're a white blood cell that will actually attack tumors or virus cells and knock them out and disable them before they're growing. And so there's a really helpful, these NK cells, these natural killer cells, really helpful when we're thinking about potential cancer prevention. And now it's important to know that a lot of this research, it doesn't come with clinical randomized control trials and excellent precision in like the level of medical research and data that we need to really say, you know, this is a supportive therapeutic approach, but we're getting there, we're exploring this. And I was really compelled by these ideas that just spending, you know, a week out in nature, but sometimes even just a 2-hour walk, we can see these boosts in the natural killer cells. And there was even one study that looked specifically at, you know, what are the features of nature that are boosting the natural killer cells? It's the calmness and the beauty of the green spaces and the blue spaces, the sounds of the birds, of the water, the soothing qualities, but also it's the smells that you're having. And particularly they were noticing the phytoscenes. These are a type of, it's essentially the essential oils that you get from a plant. And that when they pulled these phytoscenes and created essential oils from the trees, and particularly they were interested in that hinoki cypress that was in the Japanese forest, then they pulled that essential oil and they were able to show that a big part of the effect of the benefits, these benefits that you're seeing and the benefits of the natural killer cells, was produced by these essential oils. And there was a fun study where they actually then just had the essential oils in a hotel room, and you were either assigned to the room with the oils or the room without the oils. So it was a nice controlled design. And then they got the boost just from having the oils in the house. So as you can imagine, I ran out and bought a bunch of tree oils to enjoy in my house. Yeah, those were the adventure retreats that I had been on, the one in Hawaii. And I recently did one in the Adirondacks for rock climbing. I can talk more about that. My email is in the handout and on here, and I can share that through the chat in a little bit, but I can talk more about that for sure. Are there any questions so far? Cool. Well, forest bathing, what exactly is it? And it's fairly simple, but it's actually also the very simple thing is very challenging. If you've ever tried to meditate, you probably know that it is a practice, right? And it is an effortful practice at times without having any effort, but that it's this intent to stay in the present moment. There's many kinds of mindfulness and meditation practices. So when we're thinking about present moment awareness through forest bathing in nature immersion, it's really this awareness of the sensory experience. So if you have sight, then using your sight. If you have hearing, then using your hearing. Feeling through touch, if that's an experience that is meaningful to you and that is welcoming for you and positive for you. All of these different sensorial experiences, our body, our feeling of our body in the world, that proprioceptive sense that we have, engaging that mindful awareness of those experiences. And really slowing down, taking your time. If you're forest bathing in a stroll, I'll tell you about a savory stroll in a minute as an actual activity, we can call it. But if you're taking a slow forest bathing walk, you may only get a block in an hour. I actually fortunately have a dog who loves to smell things. And so she and I are slowly walking and she's sniffing everything. And as she sniffs, I slow down and observe. When you're not with some other guided partner, you're really partnered up with nature. So you're slowing down enough that you can look around and say, well, what's drawing me in? What's beautiful? What's interesting? What's curious? There's a quality of curiosity and sort of a fresh eyes that perhaps you can harness and practice this seeing life anew. And there you can feel a little of the Buddhist and the contemplative traditions there of having this novelty and this freshness and being curious, being drawn into the space. And then when you're drawn into something, sitting with it or staying with it for a moment, allowing it to really affect you sensorially and perhaps emotionally, and then maybe with that then physically, feeling the relaxing, feeling the settling, feeling the exciting and the curious, feeling those waves and emotions that are in relation with your guide, that natural world or that forest or that tree that you're sitting with. So you're not being judgmental and you're observing. And so what does that mean? Like when we're sitting down in a sit spot, and we'll talk more about that, and we're sitting in one spot and noticing as the light hits the ground and moves, or as the wind changes, as a bird comes by and pops over to say hello, that maybe our thoughts are starting to go in different directions. Maybe we're, this is very normal human thing. Our mind is active. It's used to trying to make sense of the world and think through. And so you're being drawn out of your sensorial experience and drawn maybe out of that present moment and drawn into some thought. Maybe there's a decrease in rumination, but it's not all gone, and you're starting to think about what you're going to make for dinner, or maybe what someone had said, or and instead of feeling like, oh man, I'm here to force bathe and this is what I'm doing, there's a non-judgment, there's an acceptance, there's a noticing, oh, there's a thought, and it goes and it comes and it goes and it comes. Even the best practitioners, it goes and it comes. I have read many books on forest bathing, and not all of them think you need to be present in the present moment. They're kind of going back to those first few slides I was mentioning, like being in nature, even a picture, even, even these little things we might not call nature, like watching a National Geographic or a David Attenborough show or something like that, that's beneficial. So just being with nature, and the bottom line there says it goes out, you can go out and read a book in the grass, right? Reading a book outside. And in that way you're not in the present moment with that natural guide. So there's different ways you can approach it. If you at all just get outside or bring more nature inside into your lives, that's a boost. And then maybe the practice can come where you intentionally come to a mindful space, if that suits you. What are the guidelines? So I think the guidelines are to kind of hold as a sort of benchmark of the experience that you're going to go slow and you're going to immerse yourself. You're going to be present with your senses, that nature is your guide. Nature is the one calling you in. So you're listening. Is the wind going through the trees? Is that the tree whispering with the wind? And allowing that to draw you in. And maybe your thoughts do arise. Maybe it reminds you of a feeling, and that is an important thought to have, to work through, to navigate maybe an emotional issue that kind of has ruminated, but now you're in a healing place, and it comes and you feel it soothed by the wind, as if there's an intentional quality to the wind coming right at that time, and that allows for a bit of a shift, a bit of a movement. And so there's nature as your therapist, nature as your therapy guide. But you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to worry if you're not doing it right. You're doing it right. You're just outside. You're just with nature. You're just here. You're noticing. That's great. And you're coming back to this moment. You're coming back to your senses. You're coming back to that curious space again and again and again. And you're noticing what nature has to offer you. I would say a key guideline would be to always consider where you are and make sure that you're in a safe place. You're in a safe situation. This can be safety in terms of physical safety, that you're engaging in a mindfulness on a very safe path that's not close to a river, or maybe close to a river, but not something that you're going to be kind of able to fall or slip, that the path is safe for you, that you can navigate through. Other forms of physical safety just to be considerate of. And then also this practice can be done anytime you're out in nature. You go for a drive out to the coast, maybe you live at the coast, but you go out there and you spend a little time by the river or the ocean and enjoying it, and it might not be a local place for you, and you've gone far, and here you are, and you've gone for a great hike to a top of a mountain that you haven't done ever before and probably won't do again, and you take a moment to really simmer and savor, have a sit spot. You can use these in non-local, not ordinary experiences, but I'd also encourage you to practice in an ordinary local place. So finding a place, if you have a local park near your neighborhood, if you have a spot maybe on your back porch or your balcony, or if you have a garden, having a place you can return to again and again. I have a local place. For me, it's the sandbar at the river, and so there's the confluence of rivers where I live, the Hood River and the White Salmon River and the Columbia River. And where the Hood River meets the Columbia River, a sandbar has formed. And I can go there day and night when it's light out, and the light in Hood River changes dramatically. We have long, long days in the summer and short days in the winter time, and the weather changes. I used to live in Florida, so I've never really had all these seasons. So we'll actually have snow on the sand at times. What's also cool about this space for me is as I go back again and again, day after day, the river is not only changing, sometimes it's like glass and sometimes it looks like an ocean and it sounds like an ocean, and I can pretend I'm back in Florida a little bit walking along the ocean. The sky changes, various colors of gray and sometimes blue, and but the water level changes, I think, because of the dams and the rivers releasing water from the mountains, and that combination of things can change then the water and then the actual shape of the sandbar. And just being very local and familiar, then you know where it is safe and where it's not so safe to walk. But that local quality is important because then you can return again and again. And I have a pretty consistent practice where I go there and it's almost like a quick shift. I can be a little tense and have a long day and have a lot on my mind, and I just arrive. And it's as if it's already like my brain, my body, my soul is remembering the place and like, oh, you're here, you're in your happy place. Kind of like Jenny's happy place. I think that it may be helpful to consider this as a reciprocal process, a reciprocal experience that you're having with the natural world. That nature, as your guide, is offering you these gifts of beauty and sensory experiences and introspection, transformation, calming, curious, all these great psychological experiences that you can have. These are gifts. And the water is a gift, and the sky is a gift, the rain is a gift. And so what are the gifts that we can give back? How can we reciprocate? One may be, just being present. There's a reciprocity if you're in the forest of just the breath. As you breathe in what the trees have released and you exhale, the trees absorb that. There's this reciprocity of breath with the trees, or if you're by the ocean with the algae. Algae actually creates much of the oxygen that we breathe. It's not just the trees. So there's that kind of reciprocity. There's also things you can maybe offer. Maybe sing a song or maybe plant a tree. Maybe make a commitment that you'll spend a little bit more time taking care of the environment, taking care of your home, and having less of a footprint on the land. When you come into your intentional practice of forest bathing, forest breathing is a part of forest bathing as well, that what you're doing is you're arriving, and you're arriving in relation with this partner, with nature, and you're engaging your senses, you're noticing your place. You arrive and just look around you. Look around. What do you see? What is there? What's being offered? What are these gifts? Getting a sense of place, really sort of settling in, and that's kind of the orienting quality. And then you're kind of settling into yourself as well. Well, how is my body feeling? How am I feeling? A little tense? Can I relax my shoulders a little bit? Where's my body drawn to? And then where are your senses being captured? Where are your eyes being drawn to? Your hearing being drawn to? Really arrive in that moment, in that space, and bring intention to it. Like, I'm going to give this time to myself. It's almost like a therapeutic, I go to get a massage, I go to the acupuncturist, I go to the doctor, and now I go out to nature and I have my treatment. It's a good one. So I much prefer this to some of my other treatments. So I'm going to talk about just a few of the nature immersion practices. I sent out a PDF with a collection of 7, and I chose these because they offer an array of experiences. Some are a little bit more calming when you might be more activated. Some are good for that calming moment, and others are good for repetition. One is sort of just kind of characterizing the basic experience. So there's a range, but I thought of these all as being really accessible things that you can practice on your own. We're not going to actually practice a forest bathing experience today, but I'm happy to practice with you if you want to, exchange phone numbers and we can like contact each other and go outside and talk to each other, or if you want to catch up after some forest bathing experiences and reflect, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm a practitioner myself, so I think that that experience can really boost the process, creating community. And I think part of the goal too with some of this work is we're creating a community with our natural world and with ourselves, but how that community is extended and shared, and sharing it with other humans, I think can be a really good thing. Yay, good, let's do it. So, savory stroll. This is sort of kind of what I've been describing. Oh yes, I'll be coming to the coast. I'm enjoying the chat at the same time while trying to chat with y'all. This is what happens with my students. We'll have like multiple conversations. But yeah, send any questions or thoughts in the chat and I'll take pause. But so the savory stroll, savoring is actually a thing researchers just like explore and discover interesting things about. There's a cool book by a psychologist, but it's written pretty well. It's entertaining and interesting and accessible and curious, but it's a book called Savoring. And so it's the science of engaging those senses and then pausing. If you smell something, pausing and just feeling that positive, curious smell. I was at the coast and I was actually surfing, and it was beautiful and the sunset was going, and I'm walking back to where I was staying, and my brain was just going like, oh, I have work to do. Should I like do some work before we eat? And what should I be doing? And oh my goodness, I'm nervous. And these people I'm new around, and what are they going to think? And I'm like, I noticed my thoughts going into these like sort of critical spaces and fearful spaces and just regular logistical spaces. And I stopped. I said, look where you are. These beautiful dunes and the ocean behind you, and the sun is setting, turning the sky an incredibly bright orange color. Be here. So I start walking, and it's gone again. My brain is just going, and I stop. I'm like, okay, be here. And I start walking, and my brain starts going, and I stop, like physically stop. I'm like, can I stop and be here? And I breathe in, and in my nose and also in my mouth, as if I tasted the grasses all around me and the dunes. They just had this incredible smell taste to them. It was salty, it was familiar, it reminded me of my childhood playing in the grasses, and just stopping for that moment and savoring that experience, the smell, the warm feelings that come from childhood, happy memories, and really sitting with that joy and savoring those positive, warming heart feelings. Often our brains are really geared towards focusing on the negative, the alert, the protect. If you buy into this deeper idea of evolution, they say our brains were really evolved in this way for multiple generations, living closer to the land and having, saber-toothed tigers or, I don't know, kind of animals outside ready to pounce on you. But that we have this predisposed tendency to focus a little bit on the negative, and then our brain will actually hold on. Our amygdala is our emotional center of our brain, and it's right next to our hippocampus, and that will actually lock in those negative things, and it will hold on to that stuff, and the positive will sometimes just float away. And this is for survival and protection, but thanks brain, no thanks. Focus on the positive. You can rewire your brain. Our brains are incredibly plastic. So that practice of pausing and savoring those positive experiences, those joyful experiences, can really teach the brain that this is where I want to spend my time. This is where my mind can go. It's as if your forest was a meadow of grasses and it's fresh, and you move through that meadow. That first time it's hard trekking through the grasses. The next day it's a little easier. The next day you've got a nice path going. Within days, that's a beautiful path. It's reified, it's created. That's like the neural network of your brain. As you walk that path, it strengthens that path. So when you take these moments to savor the beauty of your senses, the pleasure of the natural world, the positive feelings that you have, it can really capture that and support. And it's so much easier the next time, sort of like when I get down to the river and I just feel calmness. I guess it would be better to be said, that wash of calmness. It's like my brain's just ready for it. A sit spot is a really common kind of meditation that I've seen in, yoga and Buddhism, and I've also seen it just a lot in these like camps that kids go on or people go on, these outdoor recreation experiences. You can actually YouTube sit spots and see some videos, so you could maybe grab a sit spot video and bring it outside to your backyard and practice a little bit on your own this weekend. It's rainy here. So there's no bad weather, only bad gear. Just bundle up. And that might be a beautiful sit spot. But what you're doing is you're sitting and you're allowing your senses to inform you. What do you see? What do you notice? And what happens is, as you sit there for amount of time, maybe 10 minutes or then 20 minutes go by, all of a sudden things are continuing to unfold and reveal themselves to you. Nature is intricate, dynamic, complex. You sit down and you think, I'm just sitting here next to this lavender bush. And then you sit and you get a waft of the delicious scent of the lavender as the wind comes by, and it draws you a little bit closer. And as you're sitting there, all of a sudden, a tiny little ladybug pops out and starts to walk across, and then a praying mantis is right behind the ladybug, and you're there watching National Geographic right in your little lavender bush. But these things will unfold. So there's different ways to practice this, and you can find a way that really works for you. I know that some people like to kind of go through a certain rhythm. When they sit down in the same spot, they start with, well, where's the sun today? And where does the sun go? And where was it? And you're noticing changes. Now, where's the light from the sun hitting? Where are the shadows? You can kind of take inventory. Okay, so where's light? What are the sounds? Do I hear water? Where is water? Are there animals? Where are those animals? Yep. Any questions about this one? This one's really, I highly recommend practicing this because it's that deepening of relation. When you practice again and again, this is a form of mindfulness. So if you find that going to the yoga class or going to the mindfulness class is a little bit, I have family members who have a lot of energy. I'm more like a sloth, so I can sit around and just stare at things. But I have family members, they have to go, and that can be a little anxiety producing sometimes to sit in meditation. So to go out into the sit spot, you've got this active engagement. So you're practicing that muscle, you're building that beautiful brain capacity to stay in the present moment and attend and be aware. And that's actually a really healthy thing for our brain to do, because we get better at handling stress when we've practiced this muscle. So it's not that stress doesn't happen, but it actually affects the brain differently. It just kind of washes through you. It doesn't rattle you and shake you like it would without the practice. So you're getting this mindful practice, but you're outside nature, and it's entertaining, and it's connecting you to a specific space and our place. And so you feel that unfold. That relationship unfolds. Just Yeah, so we have a really helpful comment that this could be something that teachers can do with kids when they get back to school. And I do know some teachers here, even at the high school in Hood River, who will bring students outside for sort of walking mindfulness practices out in nature so they can feel that connection. One of my hopes for your experience here today is to kind of take away curiosity in your heart about who are you in relationship with nature? What draws you to nature? What inspires you? What's the nature that you love? Really noticing nature. And so this practice, noticing nature, is an endeavor for you to journal and record and connect to yourself in relationship to nature. So go outside, take these walks, and take pictures of things that you notice, that draw you in, that bring about that joy, that evoke those positive emotions. Taking those pictures, it's more about capturing the experience, not so much about taking a beautiful picture that you're ready to post on Facebook, but more about capturing the experience so that you can bring it home and journal about it, think about it, reflect about it, maybe even bringing a journal with you if you have time to take a picture and write in the journal, reflecting, and this building a sense of self in relation to nature. Who am I? How do I love nature? What are the things and the features? I think you've noticed maybe that I talk about the lighting a lot. For me, the way that light hits trees and trickles through, and when it hits my skin, the warmth with the cool breeze, there's something for me that's incredibly fascinating about lighting, even housing lighting. And then this one is something that I learned through my therapists, that this is a technique that we can use to calm our sympathetic nervous system. So we do have research that shows that with deep breathing and grounding into the present moment, pulling away from those fearful cycling thoughts and dropping into the body, being with the presence of these senses, that we can actually, it can take some time depending on how activated you are, but in some moments, or maybe upwards of 20 moments if you're more in a panic state, it can take some time, but to really settle back into that calm state, shifting that sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system. So you can practice this when you're not so stressed out, and then see when you do feel a little activated, can this help? And you can do it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or 3, 2, 1. But essentially you're thinking about, 5, or if you start at 3, 3, things that you can see. And then really like noticing, okay, so I see a picture of some green mountains, and really describing it, describing the colors, describing the qualities of what you see, and you're really grounding into this space. You're getting out of your head into the space. What's another thing you see? Okay, I see another picture. This one's an octopus, very green and blue and yellow tentacles. And then you move on to the next sense, maybe 4 things you hear, 3 things you feel, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste. And you can mix it up. You can try different. Maybe you're not going to be licking any rocks or anything, but open your mouth and taste those grasses. Or maybe you just skip the taste one and you're focused on, the senses you have and the senses that you enjoy engaging with. So I have these references. They're also on my handout. I'm happy to share more. I have so many more. I'm running out of time, so I won't be able to do this guided meditation, but I can send you to this website, sapphireheart.org, and you can engage in an earth energy meditation with my meditation teacher, Emily Martin. It's really a beautiful meditation that helps me when I'm feeling a little disconnected from nature. I'm in a meeting at work and I just kind of tether to the earth and I relax and I release my stressful energy into the earth, and that release is so restorative and calming, and it's really beautiful. I want to say thank you to everyone who has been putting this together and inviting me to share this with you all today. I'm here to connect with you afterwards. I'm an Oregonian. I'd like to say that. And so I'm around and I'm happy to share experiences. Maybe we can have like a little forced bathing Zoom club.
Love that idea.
Well, for that. Jolina, thank you so much for doing this. And it's so nice to see you because I really haven't seen your face since the day I met you when we met at Survivor Fest years ago. And we're so blessed that you were able to come and be a part of this with us. And it's amazing that we can do this and reach people all over the country. And so we're really blessed. That was so informative. I have a lot to process.
I love that we have a lot that we can take with us, you know, in our own environments, or if we can't quite get to nature because of the weather, some opportunities to maybe just think about how we bring them into our homes as well. So I think that, not speaking for everybody else, but speaking for myself, that I got so much out of that, and really going to take the time to notice the sand between my toes next time I go walk on the beach, and find my good sit spot there, and make sure I'm paying attention to all those details. So I appreciate you reminding me that that's important.
That sounds so good.
And
does anybody else have anything else? I'm sorry, just real quick.
No, yeah, what's up?
No, a lot of thank you.
I have one little thing.
Yes.
I put it in the comments too, but last night, it was actually on Tom and Kristen's suggestion, but some friends of ours suggested that we watch the movie My Octopus Teacher, and I believe it's on Netflix.
So great.
It was amazing, and it just so speaks to this. It's someone who
I love My Octopus Teacher.
Like 300 and some odd days, went out and did this. I mean, he seaweed forest bathed, but I mean, still, it was a forest. I just found that amazing. So for anyone who's interested in this, I would recommend that. It's basically a guy who did that in the ocean, and it's really incredible.
Oh, you've made your alarm crickets. That's bringing nature right to your phone. I love it.